okay, you think I'm that old? Actually, I was grade 2 when martial law was taken.
Yeah.
And I was 7 years old. And at that time, as you can imagine, if you're in elementary school, high school, and then you grow up under that kind of government, they tell you what to do. Always, you know, like they force you to sing patriotic songs of the new society. They direct the curriculum of your school to teach you about what they would want you to learn. Not what is the reality, but what they would try to teach as propaganda for the regime. Now, also during that time, media was not free, and there was no internet. So there was a Ministry of Information which was headed by Doroy Valencia, and he was, of course, a Marcos crony. And they would feed the public through television, radio, and newspapers propaganda or what they wanted the public to know regarding the new society or the Marcos regime. Of course, the term that was used for people, young people who grew up during that age, that era, was martial law babies, and that was us actually. We are martial law babies because we actually grew up under martial law. So, come the 80s, when we were already in college, we weren't really expected to raise any voice of protest because we were expected to be conformists because we grew up under the strict discipline and control of the Marcos propaganda regime. So it was a surprise actually that when the EDSA Revolution 1 came, it was actually our generation which spearheaded the effort to topple the dictatorship.
So you experienced talaga ng dictatorship from grade school to college?
Yes.
Oh, wow. So,
Martial
there are advantages in the sense that you get to see the worst in life. So when freedom comes, you get to appreciate freedom more than if you were just reborn and raised in a free society. So in our generation, we experienced the worst in Philippine society. Dictatorship, living under the yoke of being told what to do all the time, being miseducated in the wrong values of obedience, blind obedience, and not questioning the authority. And the disadvantage of that would be that you lose your sense of independence to an extent. That if you're being told to do what your whole life, you were born and raised to be a conformist. Now the advantage would be, like I said earlier, once you taste freedom after coming from the yoke of dictatorship, it's very difficult to give up. So you fight for it more than somebody who has never lost his freedom, who's never experienced being under a dictatorship, who takes everything for granted. No.
why?
No, because freedom is actually freedom and democracy go hand in hand with development, in my opinion. You would hear contrary opinions, but my opinion is that the more free people are, the more creative they become, and thus the more productive they are, and the more progress there is. People who are actually told what to do, like the robots, and they never develop into thinking people. Actually, it stunts the progress and growth of the nation. Because as I said, the soul, the basic commodity of a nation is really its people who grow up in freedom and live in order to maximize their potential in terms of creativity. Marcos actually started out very well. The intentions were good. His new society stressed discipline, oneness, love of country, doing away with the colonial mentality, patriotism, and progress. Now, somewhere along the way, the implementation was there was a flaw. Um, when you have a totalitarian dictatorship such as what Marcos had, corruption comes in. So he had a lot of cronies, a lot of his family, his wife were abusive, and basically they became very corrupt, and they started plundering the nation's wealth. Now, like I said, the values which the new society of President Marcos, which he espoused, were good, but the implementation, or how they implemented it vis-a-vis the society, the Philippine society, was not proper. Um, the EDSA revolution actually is an awakening. Um, for those who grew up under the yoke of martial law, we were very passive and submissive to the dictatorship at that time. And again, at that time, those who lived through it could not have imagined, by any stretch of imagination, that you could have overthrown or changed the society through a peaceful revolution. That was a first in the world. And the EDSA revolution actually reawakened the Filipino people and the youth of my age. I was fourth year college when the EDSA revolution happened. I was 21 in February 1986. I joined the revolution. I was at EDSA. I was at Camp Crame. I was among those who painted slogans on the walls. And we marched to the streets throughout my whole college life. And basically, the term that was used to describe our generation was the martial law baby is now reawakened. So we reawakened our spirit of freedom, love of freedom, which we never had when we were in elementary and high school. So the reawakening is really a term, an apt term to describe the generation of my generation, where we were able to rekindle basic values of love of country, freedom, initiative, and fearlessness. Those people who say that we were better under the new society were those perhaps who benefited under it. But they have those who never lived through it and said that have a wrong perception of what the new society was all about. I recall that during the new society, during the time of Marcos, there was no middle class. It's either we were very poor or very rich. And those who were very rich were those who were connected in some way to the regime of martial law. And those were basically the only people who were profiting. So you would see very few people with houses, with cars, of a middle class. That changed when freedom came, because the playing field was leveled. Competition came in. Cronyism was thrown out. Monopolies still exist to a certain extent now, but they were drastically reduced after the EDSA revolution. So with the leveling of the playing field, a lot more people got to participate in not just the political process, but also in the economy. Businesses were flourishing. Of course, there's still a struggle now, but you have to admit that the opportunities are there if you grab the opportunity. You still have the opportunity. And you could not have been talking the way you're talking right now. During that time, you would have been arrested. So if you write something in the newspaper against the government, they would arrest you. So there are some newspapers where they spoke out against the government. They were closed down. And the only newspapers that we had at the time were two: the Bulletin
and Daily Express,
Bulletin Today, which is now the Manila Bulletin, and the Daily Express, which is run by both the government. So the headlines were the same. The stories were all the same for those two newspapers. All the channels in television were controlled by them.
And
So
I- yeah.
we did not know what was happening in the outside world. We had no accurate report